November 8th, 1968. Madison Square Garden, New York. 11:52 p.m. Johnny Cash sat alone in his dressing room after the biggest concert of his career, staring at an envelope that had been waiting for him backstage. The handwriting was unmistakable, though he hadn't seen it in 15 years. It was from Vivian, his first wife, the woman he'd left behind, the woman whose story the world never really heard. Inside that envelope was a letter that would force Johnny to confront the truth about who he'd been before he became the Man in Black. What the world didn't know was that while millions celebrated Johnny Cash as a romantic figure who found true love with June Carter, there was another woman whose life he'd shattered along the way. But what nobody knows is what really happened in that first marriage, and why Johnny spent the rest of his life trying to make peace with the man he'd been. The girl who believed in him first. July 1951, San Antonio, Texas. Johnny Cash was 20 years old, stationed at an Air Force base, when he met Vivian Liberto at a roller skating rink. She was 17, beautiful, and completely unimpressed by the young airman's attempts at charm. "You're not a very good skater," Vivian observed, as Johnny stumbled for the third time. "I'm better at other things," Johnny replied with a grin. "Like what?" "Like writing letters. Give me your address and I'll prove it." Vivian laughed, but something about his earnestness made her write down her address. That decision would change both their lives forever. For the next 3 years, while Johnny was deployed to Germany, they wrote letters. Hundreds of them. Johnny poured his heart onto those pages, sharing dreams about becoming a musician, fears about his future, hopes for a life beyond the cotton fields of Arkansas. "Dear Vivian," one letter began, "I know I'm not much right now. Just a poor boy from Dias, with more dreams than sense. But I promise you, if you'll wait for me, I'll build us a life worth living. I'll make something of myself. I'll make you proud." Vivian kept every letter. She waited. She believed in him when he was nobody. When Johnny returned from Germany in 1954, they married within weeks. Vivian was 19. Johnny was 22. Neither of them had any idea what was coming. But you're not ready for what happened when Johnny's dreams started coming true. The cost of chasing fame. 1955 to 1961. Johnny got his break with Sun Records in 1955. Suddenly, the struggling appliance salesman was becoming a star, and Vivian watched as the man she'd married slowly disappeared. "I'll only be gone a few weeks," Johnny promised before his first tour. He was gone for 2 months. "The record company needs me to promote the single," he explained. Vivian was home alone with their first daughter, Roseanne. "Just one more tour, then I'll take a break," he said. But there was always one more tour, one more recording session, one more opportunity he couldn't turn down. Vivian found herself raising their daughters essentially as a single mother, while her husband became famous singing about love and loneliness. The irony wasn't lost on her. "Do you know what it's like," she wrote to him in 1958, "to hear you on the radio singing about missing home when you chose not to be here? You could come home. Johnny, you just don't want to." Johnny read that letter on a tour bus, high on pills, and felt nothing but resentment. How dare she not understand? He was doing this for them, building a career, providing for his family. But the truth was more complicated. Johnny was running from the poverty of his childhood, running from the memory of his brother's death, running from the feeling that he'd never be good enough. And Vivian was collateral damage. Don't miss what broke their marriage beyond repair. The woman who came between them. 1961. The truth about June Carter. When June Carter joined Johnny's tour in 1961, Vivian felt it immediately. Not jealousy at first, but fear. She'd seen how Johnny looked at June, how he came alive around her in a way he no longer did at home. "She's just a performer," Johnny insisted. "A colleague. You're being paranoid." But Vivian wasn't paranoid. She was watching her husband fall in love with someone else in slow motion. "June understands the music business," Johnny would say, as if that justified everything. "She gets what I'm trying to do." "And I don't?" Vivian asked. "Because I stayed home raising our daughters while you chased your dreams." "That's not fair." None of this is fair, Johnny. I believed in you first. I waited for you. I supported you when you had nothing. And now that you're successful, I'm not good enough anymore? Johnny had no answer for that, because she was right. The cruel truth was that Vivian had been perfect for the man Johnny was, but June seemed perfect for the man he was becoming. And Johnny chose to become someone new rather than stay who he'd been. The pills made it easier to justify. The fame made it easier to pretend. The distance made it easier to forget that back home, a woman who'd loved him first was breaking apart. You won't believe what Vivian discovered that finally ended everything. The betrayal that couldn't be forgiven. October 1965. The evidence she couldn't ignore. Vivian had suspected for years, but she'd tried to save her marriage, tried to be understanding, tried to believe Johnny's promises that nothing was happening with June. Then she found the hotel receipt, room service for two, champagne, the same hotel where June was staying during a tour stop in Las Vegas. "It's not what you think," Johnny said when she confronted him. "Then what is it, Johnny? Explain it to me." "We're friends. We were celebrating the successful show. Don't lie to me anymore. Please. I've endured a lot, but don't make me a fool." Johnny's silence was the confirmation she'd dreaded. "I want a divorce," Vivian said quietly. "Vivian, wait. Let's talk about this." "We're done talking. We've been done for years. I just didn't want to admit it." The divorce was finalized in 1966. Vivian got custody of their 4 daughters. Johnny got his freedom and his guilt. He'd later say the divorce was one of his greatest regrets, but he'd make the same choices again. That's what made it tragic. The letter that changed everything. November 1968. Back to Madison Square Garden. Johnny opened Vivian's letter with trembling hands. Inside were pages written in her familiar handwriting. "Dear Johnny, I'm not writing this to hurt you or to ask for anything. I'm writing because our daughters deserve to know the truth someday, and I want you to hear it from me first. You weren't a villain, Johnny. You were just a man who wanted something more than the life we'd built, and you didn't know how to want both. I don't hate you for leaving. I hate you for making me believe you'd stay, for all those promises in your letters from Germany, for making me fall in love with a man who disappeared the moment his dreams came true. But here's what I need you to understand. I loved you when you were nobody. I believed in your music when no one else did. I supported your dreams when they were just fantasies. And when you finally made it, you decided I wasn't sophisticated enough, wasn't part of that world enough, wasn't June Carter enough to deserve to share in what we'd built together. You didn't just leave me, Johnny. You erased me. The world knows June as the woman who saved you. But who was I? The woman you practiced loved before you found the real thing? The mother of your children who wasn't worth mentioning in interviews? I'm not asking for your guilt. I'm asking for acknowledgement. Our marriage mattered. I mattered. What I sacrificed mattered. Our daughters need to know their father wasn't perfect, but he also wasn't the monster some people make him out to be. You were just human, flawed and searching, and sometimes selfish, but human. I hope you find whatever it is you're looking for, Johnny. I hope June gives you what I couldn't. But I also hope you remember on nights when you can't sleep that there was a girl in San Antonio who loved you first, who loved you best, who loved you when love was all either of us had. That girl deserved better than to become a footnote in your legend. Vivian. Johnny sat in that dressing room and cried, really cried. For the first time in years, he felt the full weight of what he'd done. Not just the affair, not just the divorce, but the erasure. The way he'd rewritten his own history to make his love story with June sound destined, as if Vivian had just been a mistake along the way. She wasn't a mistake. She was the woman who believed in him when belief was all she had to offer, and he'd thrown that away, the years of trying to make it right. 1969 to 2003. After receiving that letter, Johnny tried to do better. He provided financial support beyond what the divorce required. He made sure his daughters knew he loved them, even if he hadn't been the father they deserved. He spoke more carefully in interviews about his first marriage, acknowledging his failures, but he could never fully make it right. How do you apologize for becoming someone different, for outgrowing a love that was real, but not enough? In his autobiography published in 1997, Johnny wrote about Vivian with genuine remorse. He called the divorce his fault, said she'd been a good wife and he'd been a terrible husband, admitted the pills and the fame and his own selfishness had destroyed what they'd built. But even that honesty felt incomplete, because the truth was more complicated than just admitting fault. The truth was that Johnny had loved Vivian, but not enough to choose her over his dreams. And that's not quite villainy, but it's not quite redemption either. It's just the sad reality of two people who wanted different things, and one of them had the power to choose, while the other could only accept. The conversation Johnny never had. Spring 2003, 4 months before his death. In Johnny's final months, after June had died, he thought often about Vivian. She was still alive, living quietly in California, remarried to a man who'd given her the stable life Johnny never could. "Do you think she'd talk to me?" Johnny asked his daughter Roseanne. "If I called her, do you think she'd answer?" "I don't know, Dad. What would you say?" "That I'm sorry, that she deserved better, that I wish I'd been a different man." "You can't change the past." "No, but I can acknowledge it. I can stop letting the legend erase the truth." Johnny never made that call. Whether from fear or pride or simply running out of time, he died without having that final conversation. Vivian learned of his death on the news. Like everyone else, she didn't attend the funeral. "Are you sad he's gone?" someone asked her. "I was sad long before he died," Vivian replied. "I was sad the day he stopped being the man who wrote me those letters from Germany. I've been grieving Johnny Cash for 50 years. His actual death is just the end of a very long goodbye." The truth nobody wants to hear. Here's what nobody talks about when they celebrate Johnny and June's great love story. It was built on the ruins of another woman's dreams. That doesn't make it less real, but it doesn't make it innocent either. Vivian Liberto loved Johnny Cash when he was just John R. Cash from Dyess, Arkansas. She married potential, not success. She supported dreams, not reality. And when those dreams came true, she discovered that success had changed the dreamer into someone who no longer needed her. That's not a unique story. It happens all the time. People grow. People change. People fall out of love. What makes it tragic is how completely Vivian was erased from the narrative. For decades, the story was Johnny found true love with June, and they lived happily ever after. The end. Vivian was a footnote. An early marriage that didn't work out. But she wasn't a footnote. She was a woman who gave 15 years of her life to a man who rewarded her faith by falling in love with someone else. She was a mother who raised 4 daughters largely alone while their father chased fame. She was the first believer who got left behind when the dream came true. And Johnny knew it. That's what the letter forced him to confront. He'd built his legend partly by erasing her story, by making it seem like June was his destiny and Vivian was just a detour. But Vivian wasn't a detour. She was the road that got him where he was going, and he never gave her credit for that. Some love stories are complicated. Some heroes are flawed. Some legends are built on truths we'd rather not examine. Johnny Cash was a great artist. He was also a man who hurt people, who made selfish choices, who prioritized his dreams over his promises. Both things can be true. The question is whether we're brave enough to hold both truths at the same time. Vivian Liberto Cash Diston died in 2005, 2 years after Johnny. She'd remarried. She'd built a life. She'd found peace, or something close to it. But in her final interviews, when asked about her first husband, her answers were always complicated. "Did you love him?" "More than anything. For a while he was my whole world." "Do you regret marrying him?" "I regret that he couldn't love me the way I loved him. But I don't regret my daughters, and I don't regret believing in him when no one else did. I just wish believing in someone hadn't cost me so much." That's the real story. Not a villain and a victim, not a romantic legend. Just two people who loved each other until one of them wanted something more. and the other was left holding the pieces of what they'd built together.